On a December morning in 2000, the station received a disturbing call. Denise Williams, in an agitated voice, reported that her husband Michael had not returned home after work. As usual, he had called in the evening saying he would stay late at the office. By midnight, however, he had not shown up. He wasn't at work either. Experienced Detective Ryan Wood was assigned to the case. The first thing he did was go to the Williams home in an upscale neighborhood of the city. Denise met him with tearful eyes, clutching their 5-year-old daughter Emily in her arms. An inspection of the house revealed nothing suspicious, just perfect order and comfort, indicative of a prosperous family life. The first suspect was inevitably Denise herself. However, her alibi was impeccable. That night she was on duty at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. Colleagues corroborated her story. Gradually, Wood began to collect a strange mosaic of facts about Mike Williams. Coming from a poor family, he was accustomed to hard work from childhood. After graduating from a prestigious Christian school, Mike went to university where he studied political science and urban planning. After graduation, he was hired by Ketchum Appraisal Group as a real estate appraiser. Here, Williams proved to be one of the best employees, earning under $200,000 a year. In 1994, Mike married his high school girlfriend, Denise Merrill. Colleagues described him as a model family man who adored his daughter. In 1999, their only daughter, Emily, was born. However, in recent months, as further investigation showed, in the family, it'll began to appear the first cracks. In early 2000, Mike's father passed away, and he was taking the loss hard. And in the middle of the year, he and Denise decided to insure themselves by taking out a life insurance policy on Williams for $1 million. The policy was purchased through Brian Winchester, an old family friend who later became Mike's financial advisor and best friend. Shortly before his disappearance, Williams hinted in a conversation with his mother that he needed a large sum of money, about $50,000 for next year's vacation. The couple also told relatives about plans to have a second child and take a cruise to Hawaii in the spring. The further Wood dug, the more he found strange details and inconsistencies in the respectable life of Mike Williams. The detective felt that with each new stroke, the picture of the disappearance grows more and more sinister details. He was convinced there was a mystery in the case that had everything to do with Williams's recent insurance and financial affairs. The motive for murder or a staged disappearance was clear. But who was the mastermind? The investigation promised to be a heavy one, with numerous plot twists and turns. Detective Wood plunged into the thick of things, determined to unravel this sinister case. Saturday morning, December 16, 2000, was frosty and foggy. Mike Williams dressed quietly after dark, trying not to wake his sleeping family. As an avid hunter, he had long loved the early forays into duck hunting. On his way out, Mike cast one last glance at little Emily, sweetly snoozing in her crib. He would miss her terribly. A couple hours later, Williams had already unhooked the boat at a lonely pier on Lake Seminole. After saluting the morning dawn with another shot, he went to inspect the traps he had set earlier. Mike was raking the ice crust between the snags with his oar when a deafening crack sounded. The boat had pierced the bottom of something metal under the water. Instantly, water rushed out of the hole. The boat began to sink rapidly into the cold waves. Mike rushed to the shore but got bogged down in the sludge. The water-heavy wading boots made his movements stiff. With each stroke, the effort to stay afloat became harder. Williams tried again to free his feet from the boots, but in his panic he failed. After a couple of minutes, wheezing and gulping down a deadly cocktail of icy water and silt suspensions, he went underwater, frantically grasping for the last bubbles of air. At this stage, experts were leaning towards a tragic accident. But Detective Wood sensed that the story was not as simple as it seemed. A number of details did not want to be linked into a coherent chain of events. Firstly, the location of Mike's disappearance was too suitable for a hypothetical drowning. The shallow lake, literally littered with the remains of old trees, was indeed suitable for causing irreparable damage to a dilapidated boat and drowning a man in icy water. The physical evidence itself was also suspicious: a jacket floating in the middle of the lake and a flashlight with Williams' license, as if it had been planted on purpose to fit the story under realistic circumstances. Secondly, Wood found out that just 6 months before his disappearance, Mike had taken out a $1 million life insurance policy through his best friend Brian Winchester. It was rumored that shortly before the tragedy, Williams was often interested in the details of insurance payments. The impression was that he was up to something. But what? Third, unflattering facts about Williams' marital life surfaced. It turns out that recently there had been a lot of quarrels between them because Denise was away at work a lot of the time. The wife even threatened several times to take her daughter and leave her husband. Could it be that someone from the couple in love, driven by greed and resentment, decided to kill? Finally, Wood had information that shortly before his disappearance, Mike had met with a person named Jeff Sykes, known for his connections in the criminal world. Why would a successful real estate appraiser need such acquaintances? It's possible that other forces could have been behind the tragedy. The detective realized, to get to the truth, he will have to literally piece by piece to collect elusive details, to study hundreds of alibis, motives, and connections, to meet with a variety of people. Painstaking and laborious work, not tolerating the rush. But only in this way, gradually unraveling a bizarre tangle of lies and intrigue, it will be possible to shed light on this sinister case and restore justice. After the official search for Mike was called off and the court declared him legally dead based on the personal effects found, Williams's mother Cheryl could not accept this turn of events. She firmly believed that her son was alive and decided to continue her own investigation into the circumstances of the disappearance. At first, the woman hired a private search team, which put forward the theory that Mike's body was eaten by lake alligators. However, this theory did not explain a number of important details. First, no one had actually seen Williams cast off from the dock on that fateful day. Moreover, the boat launch was a pretty backwater, although there were well-equipped concrete pads nearby. Second, after finding Mike's abandoned boat with a running motor and a full tank, there was an oddly westerly wind, directly opposite to the launch. In such weather, an unarmed boat should have been carried across the lake to the Georgia shore. Third, experienced hunters pointed out a number of incongruities in the drowning version. Williams followed strict safety rules and never wore wading boots before coming ashore. It is far more likely that when he fell into the water, he was free to get out of his lightweight shoes. Finally, a key argument against the alligator theory was the weather itself. During the early winter search period, daytime temperatures only rarely exceeded 13 degrees C, and at night they dropped below freezing. So it was hardly possible for the cold-blooded reptiles to be active and feeding in such conditions. Experts agreed that the complete disappearance of a human being without a trace was unlikely. Even if the alligators had taken Williams' body, the bones and some fragments of clothing should have remained. And later, under very mysterious circumstances, Mike's wading boots and personal belongings were found in the search area. The boots appeared to be completely intact, with no teeth marks or lingering damage. The jacket and flashlight also looked like they had only been in the water for a couple days. The more Cheryl dug, the more questions rose around her son's disappearance. She didn't give up, continuing her own investigation alongside her work at the daycare center. The woman placed ads in newspapers and put up billboards in hopes of getting some leads. Her activity met with strong resistance, received threats urging to abandon the search. Detective Wood was once again convinced that there were definitely ulterior motives, dark secrets, and subterfuge behind the story. He was determined to get to the bottom of it, despite the possible obstacles and dangers. The situation definitely went beyond a simple tragic accident or a careless staged drowning. The events were forming a bizarre pattern of lies, ulterior motives, and possible crime. As the investigation gained momentum, it became obvious. The initial search and evidence collection in 2000 had been handled poorly. Experienced investigator Ronnie Austin was one of the first to voice the widely voiced opinion: Mike did not drown in Lake Seminole. The fact is, at the time, it was treated as a standard missing hunter incident. Law enforcement wasn't even concerned about preserving the scene as a possible crime scene. Witnesses, footprints, potential evidence, everything was literally trampled and contaminated in a matter of days due to the influx of volunteers and searchers. By the time the investigation began to suspect foul play, the opportunity to gather crucial evidence was finally lost. Williams' SUV and boat were returned to relatives. The shores of the lake turned into a fairground mess of footprints, and later found boots and belongings were lost. Detective Wood never ceased to be amazed at the donkey-like stubbornness and unprofessionalism that reigned at the time. It turned out that instead of meticulously collecting and fixing possible clues, all efforts were spent on pointless attempts to find the body that had disappeared without a trace. And later the negligence came to a head. Without solid evidence, the investigation simply reached a dead end. "We were banging our heads against a brick wall," Austin later recalled. Even after FDL became involved in the investigation, no meaningful results could be obtained. Officers ran into the same problem of a lack of direct evidence, witnesses, and possible motives. The only relatively new touch in 2007 was the discovery by Mike's brother Nick of a photograph and serial number of a .22 caliber Ruger pistol once owned by their father. Denise had not returned the gun after declaring her husband deceased. The FDLE seized the gun, sending it for DNA testing, but the results are classified. In the meantime, there was an incredible buzz around the case. Rumors of impending arrests, impending grand jury indictments, and active interest from insurance companies that had paid Denise $1.5 million on Mike's policy. And the Winchesters themselves issued a rare public statement calling for the truth to be revealed. However, all of these advances ultimately led to nothing concrete. The only movement was the 2008 involvement of the Florida Department of Insurance fraud in the investigation. Its experts drew attention to a number of suspicious inconsistencies in the processing of Denise's insurance payments. But even that lead was soon cut short due to a lack of fresh evidence and the statute of limitations on such cases. All in all, the investigation stalled again on the same problem of lack of concrete evidence. In a desperate hope to shed light on the mystery of Mike's disappearance, investigators even turned to the services of psychic Carrie Cox. She indicated possible coordinates of the body's burial in a neighboring county. However, a thorough search involving dogs yielded nothing. "We have suspicions, but we need proof," said insurance fraud expert Mark Schlein, who was forced to close the case in 2009 for lack of prospects. Detective Wood was extremely confused. The theory of drowning did not stand up to criticism, the version of other criminal motives did not find strong evidence. And at the same time, literally every detail pointed to some criminal background to this disappearance. Michael Williams seemed to disappear without a trace, leaving behind more mysteries than answers. Despite all the obstacles and setbacks, Michael Williams's mother Cheryl remained undaunted in her quest to uncover the truth about her son's disappearance. Her tenacity and perseverance was truly inspiring. After the investigation hit another dead end in 2011, the woman managed to raise public awareness through Investigation Discovery TV. In a special, details of the tangled story were revealed, and Cheryl herself renewed her appeal to help solve the mystery. "We hope that someone can find the one piece of hard evidence that will clear things up," she appealed to the program's viewers. Over the years, however, Cheryl became increasingly frustrated with the competence of Florida's investigative agencies. In her view, the FDL either deliberately slowed down the investigation or simply did not have enough professionalism to successfully solve the case. In particular, the woman was convinced that Agent Mike Phillips, a friend of the Williams family, was somehow putting a stick in the wheels. Even at the very beginning of the search, he insisted on the version with alligators, persistently mussing it in conversations with Cheryl, and later denied his involvement in the investigation, blurring the details. Distrust of FDL only grew stronger after the program aired on Investigation Discovery. Cheryl wrote daily angry messages to Governor Rick Scott demanding that he assign the case to another agency or appoint a special prosecutor. More than 200 letters went nowhere. They were simply forwarded to the hated bureau's headquarters, where they were safely covered by the missing Williams case. "They couldn't hurt me more even if they punched me in the face," lamented a devastated Cheryl, realizing the extent of the officials' neglect and deafness. It was becoming obvious to Detective Wood that since the beginning of the investigation, the Williams family had been literally stymied, whether because of someone else's mistakes or because of very definite connections and interests. It seemed that some powerful forces were trying hard to silence the story of Mike's mysterious disappearance, and it seemed that these forces had a lot of resources to achieve their goals. For how else can one explain the total inaction of the authorities, disregard for all evidence, and refusal to even consider the possibility of a criminal background? Somewhere here lurked a great mystery, sinister and powerful, coming from the very bowels of the law enforcement system. Wood felt that with each new stroke, the mysterious picture of Williams's disappearance was growing like a living thing. To get to its innermost essence required selfless labor, courage, and unbridled energy. But the experienced detective was determined to go to the end, regardless of any obstacles. During Brian Winchester's sentencing for the Williams case, there was a conspicuous omission. Despite State Prosecutor Jack Campbell's public hopes that Winchester's trial might crack the Williams disappearance wide open, the judge's decision remained cryptic on the matter. It soon surfaced that prior to the verdict, Winchester had brokered a deal with the prosecutors. Beyond a mere admission of guilt, the specifics of this agreement remained veiled in secrecy. The following day, at a press briefing shrouded in anticipation, Special Agent Mark Perez of the FDL delivered a bombshell to the gathered reporters. Williams' body had been unearthed, confirming suspicions of homicide. However, authorities steadfastly refused to unveil any details regarding the manner of death, potential suspects, or the precise location of the grim discovery. Their rationale? Such information was to be privy only to those involved in the crime. In subsequent revelations, the FDL disclosed the grisly truth. Williams' remains were found at the dead end of Gardner Road in Leon County, merely miles from his childhood stomping grounds. While the discovery provided closure, it raised more questions than answers. Following the arrest of Denise Williams, FDL divulged that they had received intel regarding the body's location back in October 2017. County laborers, under the guise of routine exercises, deployed excavators to the scene. Amidst days of arduous digging, braving the murky depths and lurking dangers, the truth emerged. Finally, on October 18th, a specialized team, aided by search dogs, unearthed Williams' remains buried beneath layers of earth and makeshift concealment. A source within the FDL disclosed to a local outlet that a staggering 98% of his bones were recovered, remarkably intact, alongside remnants of his attire, a haunting testament to the tragedy that had transpired. DNA tests swiftly confirmed the identity, leaving no doubt about the fate of Mike Williams, whose tale had gripped the nation. On May 8, 2018, Denise Williams found herself in the confines of the Florida State University, not for academic pursuits, but as the subject of a gripping tale of crime. It was a day meant for familial celebration, her daughter's 19th birthday, yet it unfolded into a web of accusations as a grand jury slapped her with charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and accessory after the fact, all in swift succession. Prosecutors held their cards close to their chest, promising revelations only when the courtroom drama unfolded, vehemently opposing any notion of bail for Denise. Her attorney, tight-lipped and strategic, refrained from public commentary, citing the urgency of scrutinizing the case. Meanwhile, her estranged husband, Winchester, languished in Wakulla Correctional Institution, his legal counsel bracing for a potential courtroom showdown. Little did they anticipate the storm brewing as charges loomed over Winchester, too. Come late June 2018, Denise Williams faced a stark reality as the court decreed her detention without bail, setting the stage for a trial slated on September 24th. What unfolded in the courtroom rivaled the suspense of a noir thriller. A pivotal moment came with the playback of an audio excerpt featuring Brian Winchester's interview with FDL. In a chilling confession, Brian admitted to pulling the trigger but shifted the blame squarely onto Denise's shoulders. Her defense argued vehemently against admitting the recording as evidence, citing the absence of charges against Winchester despite his admission. The prosecution countered, painting it as a quest for truth in the murky depths of a heinous crime. Come December, Denise Williams stood before the court, the gravity of her situation palpable. The state's star witness, Brian Winchester, took center stage, unraveling a tale of intertwined destinies dating back to their high school years, woven with deceit and betrayal. Amidst testimony from Winchester's former wife, suspicions arose, hinting at a clandestine affair brewing since the late 1990s. As Brian's confession unfolded, the courtroom was transported back to the genesis of their sinister plot, a calculated escalation culminating in a tragic demise. Their dalliance with the idea of murder to facilitate their union, driven by familial disapproval and religious constraints, painted a portrait of desperation. From staged accidents to elaborate schemes, they navigated a labyrinth of deceit until fate intervened on a hunting trip in Arkansas. Brian's narrative laid bare the harrowing events leading to Mike's demise, a chilling sequence of events orchestrated with cold precision. As the trial unfolded, the truth emerged from the shadows, exposing a tale of love twisted into a grotesque obsession. Denise Williams, once an ordinary woman, found herself ensnared in the web of her own making, where love and loyalty metamorphosed into betrayal and bloodshed. In the end, justice loomed large, casting its long shadow over those entangled in the darkest recesses of human nature. The prosecutors also played a recorded phone conversation, wherein Katie Thomas, then working with the police force, informed Denise of her knowledge regarding the crime. Every time she broached the topic, Denise attempted to deflect, but at one point queried, "What do you know?" Assistant State Prosecutor John Fox contended that Denise's evasion, coupled with her indifferent response when Winchester confessed to her about Mike's murder, showcased her chilling complicity in orchestrating the crime under her name. In response, Wayne argued that there were no tangible evidences linking Denise to the crime, asserting it was entirely Winchester's brainchild. He expressed disbelief at Winchester's absence in court despite his confession. After 4 days of jury deliberation, it took 8 hours to convict Denise on all counts. Wayne vowed to appeal the verdict. In February 2019, Denise received a life sentence without parole. She maintained a stoic silence, offering no arguments in her defense. The sole individual aside from lawyers who addressed the court was Cheryl Williams, declaring that justice had finally prevailed and Denise had not only taken her son but also her granddaughter. 5 months later, Mike and Denise's daughter, Ansley, inherited all of her late father's assets and insurance money, which Denise relinquished to her to evade prosecution on 3 counts of insurance fraud. As part of the deal, Ansley cannot utilize the funds for her mother's legal fees. Doing so would incur a $150,000 fine from the state. Currently, Denise resides in the Florida Women's Reception Center. 2 FDL officers visited Cheryl Williams's home immediately after the indictment to inform her. She refrained from disclosing her reaction to the media. The 3-page indictment was published 2 days later, revealing that the prosecution alleged Denise conspired with Winchester in March 2000, 9 months prior to her first husband's disappearance. It's asserted that Winchester shot Michael with a pistol. The accessory charge implies that between August 2014 and the day Winchester was sentenced, Denise purportedly aided Winchester in evading prosecution or arrest for the crime. Ethan Wayne, Denise's attorney, proclaimed his client's innocence on all counts. She had absolutely no involvement in Michael Williams' disappearance and had absolutely no involvement in any crimes committed by Brian Winchester. He found it convenient that the indictment came after Winchester had spent several months in jail. On Denise's behalf, Wayne declared her innocence. In January 2020, Denise Williams appealed her conviction and life sentence. Her attorney argued in the First District Court of Appeal in Florida that there was no evidence linking her to the murder. In November 2020, the murder conviction was overturned, but the conspiracy to commit murder conviction was upheld, along with its accompanying 30-year sentence.